just classes and objects and giving you guys something to look at, a video to reference when just trying to make sense out of it. So first we have our private variables. The word private here means that these belong to the class, so in this case the class dog, and to the class dog alone. They cannot be referenced outside of this block of code that all belongs to the class dog. So this curly brackets from line 4 to line 60, they are part of the class dog, and I can reference these anywhere in my code. So let's go into the constructor. So mainly in this sample, I am referencing them inside of the constructors because there's no value assigned to them. And so when I'm calling my constructors is when I'm declaring an instance of this class, which it's an object. And at that point, I want to make sure that I'm giving them these private variables values in case I reference them later and I'm actually returning a value. So this is called an empty constructor, and it's called an empty constructor because there's no parameters being passed. Now, even though there's no parameters passed, I still need the parentheses when I am declaring an instance of the class calling that empty constructor. So I still need the word new, and I still need the parentheses even though there's no parameters. I still need them because I still have them here. I still need them when I declare an object, an instance of the class, which is an object. So I'm just giving them dummy values with the empty constructor. As you can see, my private variables are a string, which is a name, a boolean, which is a boolean call is a good boy, and then a string for the breed. Then after my empty constructor, I have another constructor, so we can have multiple constructors, and classes can have uh, an undetermined amount of constructors. I think in my work, I've seen up to 4 or 5, depending on different circumstances. So here I am passing a name, and I am giving it my private variable. I'm giving it the value of the string n, which it's meant to be the name. Now I'm still giving these two, is a good boy and breed, just dummy values because I don't have a constructor that is just not part of this constructor. I chose not to have those as part of my parameters, and not all my private variables have to be part of the constructor. It all depends on what I want and why I want it. So designing a class it's up to you. I'll probably help you guys with that direction for this class, but for the future, it's up to you what you do, as long as it's doing, whatever your boss told you to do, whatever the requirements of the class are. You just, you take the approach that it's efficient and that you feel comfortable with. So after our constructors, we have properties. Now the properties are different to the private variables, but they are tied to it. So notice that I have a name and a breed. And notice that I chose not to create a property for is a good boy. So properties will allow our the interaction outside of the class because these properties are public, meaning that I can reference them. So if I come here and I want to print out Fluffy's name, then I would say Fluffy dot name. Notice that let's run this. Oh, I need to print it out. Yeah, notice that there is no parentheses after name because, like this, because name is not a function, name is a property, and so I call it as a property. And notice that I'm calling the property and not the private variable. So unnamed because I never passed a name for it. So if I change that and I say this dog is called Fluffy, and I run this again, name will have a value to it. And the reason why name with capital N has a value to it is because once I pass Fluffy here, the constructor that is being utilized is the second constructor. And so name now has a value. So underscore name has a value. And since underscore name has a value, the property name can now return that value. But even before I define the name to be Fluffy, and I was using the default constructor, it's still returning the value of underscore name. It's just unnamed because it's a dummy value, it's a default value, and it was still accessing. But notice that I'm accessing the property because the property is public. The private variable is private. So if I change this to try to reference the private variable, it's not going to let me. And this is designed on purpose. This is part of the security of my class. So here I have name. Name cannot be set once it's been set. So there's only a get functionality to it. Now breed, I'm not setting breed really in any of the constructors. I'm just giving it a default value of mutt. But I can definitely set it. And I just put some logic here so I can set it once and then not set it again. So the first time that a breed gets a value, it's coming from the constructor, which is mutt. But once I set the breed, I can only set it once, and there's no reason why I did that. I just wanted to display some functionality that is just display that this get and sets can have more logic than just returning and setting a new value to my private variable. So let's get Fluffy a breed. Fluffy breed. So this is how we set a property that we're able to set. So I couldn't do this with name, but with breed definitely able to do it. So we'll just give it Labrador, and then we're going to print out the breed. So what's happening here is I'm saying Fluffy.breed, and then I'm giving it a string value. And the reason why this works is because breed is a string, so my private variable is a string, and my property is also a string. They have to match. And so it's coming to this part of the code and saying, all right, so underscore breed is mod because it hasn't been set before. And what's happening is that it's able to know what this value is because this value is directly related to this string literal here. So when I say Fluffy.breed equals, it immediately comes to this set block of code. And this is just how it was coded. This is how it works. If you ask me, how is it able to know to do that? I couldn't tell you. It's just a mechanism that the people at Microsoft created so that we are able to not only reference properties but to set them. And so when I'm setting the breed, I'm finally able to give value to the underscore breed private variable. I couldn't do that outside of the class, but through the property breed, I am able to interact with my private variable indirectly in my main function. So if I try to do underscore breed equals Labrador, this wouldn't work either. Now notice that breed is the only thing that has a set, and name does not have a set. So if I try to set my name, or the name of my object, Fluffy, it would give me an error as well. So that set is very much necessary in order to be able to give the properties new values. So we have our properties here, and then we have our functions. So we've only used functions in main, and then the way that we've seen them is that we usually say, all right, so inside of the brackets of class program, but after the brackets of the main method, we usually create our own functions like public. Then we usually use the word static, and then I want to return int 2 plus 3. And then this function would expect a return statement. Notice there's an error here. And so once I put a return statement, it calms down because now it knows that, hey, I am supposed to return something because it's not void. Now there's a return statement, which is good. So this is how we're used to writing methods. And these methods or functions belong to the class program, and we can call them from within the main method. So I can just say 2 plus 3. And I can give it value of an int because I know it's going to return an int. So here you go. This is a way that we can use our own functions that we've seen so far. But now we are writing functions that don't belong to the program, to the class program, like we usually do, but now they belong to our class that we've defined. So in this case, it's the class Doug. So what happens is that I can reference this function using my instance of my class. So I can say, so let me get rid of this console.writeLine, and then just call the info on my fluffy Doug. So if I say fluffy dot info, this is going to call this function of my class, and it's going to reference the information of my class. So the name, the breed, and if it's a good boy, it's going to run these lines of code. So I have Fluffy. I'm going to use the other constructor Fluffy to give it a name. I'm going to call it Fluffy. And so now Fluffy has a name, a breed, and so we should see that in the info. Hello, my name is Fluffy. I am a Labrador. I am a good boy. Now, this is just one object. It's one instance of the dog class. I can have multiple instances. So if I say dog Sparky equals new dog Sparky, and then I give it a different breed, golden retriever, and then I ask for that information. It's going to run the exact same code. It's going to be the same info method that I have. However, it's not the same object. So it's not the same value for the name. It's not the same value for, well, actually, it is the same value for it's a good boy, but it's not the same value for name. It's not the same value for breed. And there are different instances of these variables. So when I run this, and we see that the first dog's name is Fluffy. Fluffy belongs to a string, but then Sparky's also coming from a different string, from different instances of strings. Labrador is coming from a different instance of a string, as well as Golden Retriever. And I am a good boy is springing out for each of them. But when it references here, it says if it's a good boy on our first object, it references a different different objects values for their private variables. So even though both are true, we're talking about two different objects. They might be the same classes, but they're two different objects. It's like saying that if I declare an int and I give a value of 5 and then declare an int and I give it a value of 4. This are two different integers. They're both integers, but they're different. They're stored in different places in my machine, and I am able to reference them separate from each other. It's the same idea with Fluffy and Sparky. We're gonna continue to talk about classes. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in class.